Americans spend over 300 hours a year just thinking about tasks they are not doing. 300 hours. That is almost 2 full weeks of mental paralysis every single year. 2 weeks of your life gone, not to doing hard things, not to resting but to the dull, corrosive anxiety of knowing you should be doing something and not doing it. Meanwhile, a simple technique practiced in Japanese workplaces and homes for decades takes less than 5 seconds and eliminates the hesitation that keeps you frozen on the couch, scrolling on your phone while a voice in your head screams at you to get up. I am talking about a method so deceptively simple you will dismiss it immediately. Your brain will say that cannot possibly work, that is too easy. And that dismissal, that exact impulse to look for something more complicated, because the simple thing could not possibly solve a problem this big. That impulse is the very thing that has been keeping you stuck. But when I tried this technique for 30 days straight, my to-do list completion rate went from around 40% to over 90%. Not because I became more motivated, not because I developed superhuman discipline, because I learned to bypass the part of my brain that was sabotaging me before I even had a chance to start. It is not motivation. It is not discipline. It is a tiny physical ritual that rewires the hesitation loop in your brain before your mind can even manufacture an excuse. And today I am going to walk you through exactly how it works, why Japanese culture has quietly embedded this into daily life for generations without making a fuss about it, and how you can steal it starting right now, before this video even ends. This video is a countdown of the most powerful anti-procrastination habits I have observed and personally tested from Japanese daily life, building up to the single most important one. The 5-second technique that changed everything for me. Some of these are so simple, they will shock you. You will hear them and think, that is just common sense, and yet you will realize you have never consistently done a single one. Others are so genius, so elegant in their understanding of how the human brain actually works, that you will wonder why no one ever told you, why this was not taught in school, why our entire culture seems designed to produce the exact opposite behavior. And the final habit, number 1 on this list, is something you can do before you even finish watching this sentence. It requires no tools, no preparation, no change in your circumstances. Just a willingness to try something that feels almost too simple to be real. Let us start with habit number 8, the not yet trap and how Japanese homes kill it before it starts. In the West, we have normalized a phrase that is destroying our ability to take action. It is a phrase so common you have probably said it 5 times today without even noticing. I will do it later, not now, maybe tomorrow, after this episode. Once I finish this scroll, when I feel more ready, the problem is not the delay itself. The problem is what happens in your brain during the delay. Every time you decide to postpone a task, your brain releases a tiny hit of relief. You just avoided discomfort. You successfully escaped something unpleasant. And your brain, that ancient survival machine sitting inside your skull, rewards avoidance with a small squirt of dopamine. Not the big dopamine rush of accomplishment, but a quiet, insidious little pulse that says, good job, you survived. You avoided the thing. So procrastination is not just a bad habit. It is a chemically reinforced addiction to the relief of not starting. Every time you say, I will do it later, you are literally training your brain to seek more avoidance. You are strengthening the neural pathway that equates postponement with pleasure. And the more you strengthen it, the harder it becomes to break. Japanese culture has an unspoken household rule that short-circuits this entire cycle before it can begin. In a traditional Japanese home, when a task appears on the horizon, it is handled in the moment it is noticed. Not scheduled, not noted for later, not added to a list that will be ignored. Done. A dish appears in the sink. It is washed, dried, and put away before the person leaves the kitchen. A piece of mail arrives. It is opened, read, and either filed or discarded immediately, right there at the jenkin or the kitchen table. A futon is slept in. It is folded and stored in the closet within minutes of waking, not left sprawled on the floor for hours. A towel is used. It is hung to dry neatly, not tossed over a chair. The cultural expectation, absorbed from childhood by watching parents and grandparents, is that noticing and doing are one continuous motion. There is no gap between recognition and action. And without a gap, there is no space for the not yet trapped to spring. There is no moment where the brain can inject the thought maybe later. The hand is already moving. The task is already resolving. The dopamine hit of avoidance never arrives because avoidance was never an option. A 2019 study from the University of Tokyo examined household habits across 200 Japanese families and found that the practice of immediate task resolution, what the researchers called immediate action upon recognition, was correlated with significantly lower reported stress levels and higher daily productivity. Not slightly lower, significantly lower. The mechanism is simple and profound. When you eliminate the cognitive load of remembering to do something later, your brain is freed from the background processing that drains mental energy all day long. Every unfinished task you're carrying around in your head, every "I will get to that later," every tiny undone thing is a weight. A small one, yes, but they accumulate. By midday, the average person is carrying dozens of these tiny weights. The unopened envelope on the counter, the sock on the bedroom floor, the text message you have not replied to, the spill in the fridge you noticed this morning and walked past. Each one occupies a small thread of your attention. And your brain, wonderful and terrible machine that it is, keeps spinning those threads in the background, checking, reminding, nagging. Did you do the thing? Did you do the thing? Did you do the thing? This is called the Zeigarnik effect, discovered by a Soviet psychologist in the 1920s. Unfinished tasks occupy more mental bandwidth than finished ones. Your brain holds onto them, keeps them active, refuses to let them go. Japanese households systematically refuse to accumulate these weights. They discharge each one the moment it appears. And the result is a mind that is quiet, uncluttered, ready for the things that actually matter. I saw this firsthand when I stayed with a friend in Kyoto for 2 weeks. Her mother, a woman in her 60s named Keiko, moved through the house like water. She never rushed. She never seemed busy or harried or overwhelmed. Her movements were calm, unhurried, almost meditative. But I watched her closely, the way you watch someone who seems to possess a secret you desperately need, and I realized she was completing dozens of tiny tasks every hour that I would have let pile up for days. A stray thread on a cushion, snip, gone, a smudge on a window, wiped clear. A plant looking slightly dry. Water done. A book left on a side table returned to the shelf. A shopping bag emptied. Folded and stored. None of these actions took more than 30 seconds. Most took less than 10, but collectively they maintained a home that felt impossibly serene. There was no visual noise. No clutter. No silent to-do list screaming at you from every surface. And the deeper lesson, the one that took me weeks to fully absorb, was this. Keiko was not disciplined in the way we think of discipline. She was not white-knuckling her way through her day, forcing herself to do things she did not want to do. She simply never gave herself the option to delay. Noticing and doing were the same thing. The gap where the rest of us live, that liminal space between seeing and acting, did not exist for her. She had bypassed it so completely, so early in life, that she no longer perceived it as a choice. A thing noticed was a thing done. That was the entire philosophy. And the peace it produced was visible in every corner of that home. Try this tomorrow, just for one day. The next time you see a small task that would take less than 2 minutes, do not let your brain create a gap. Do not let the words later or after this, or once I finish enter your mind. Do it before you finish the thought. See the sock on the floor, pick it up. See the cup on the counter, put it in the dishwasher. See the notification on your phone, respond or delete. Do not pause, do not evaluate. Do not negotiate, just move. You will be shocked at how much mental weight lifts. You will feel physically lighter by the end of the day. And you will start to understand why Japanese homes feel the way they feel. It is not minimalism. It is not aesthetics. It is the absence of deferred life. Now habit number 7. The counting down secret that Japanese schoolchildren learn before they learn to read. There is a practice in Japanese elementary schools that seems almost too simple to matter. Almost laughably basic. When a teacher needs the class to transition from one activity to another, they do not nag. They do not plead. They do not raise their voice or threaten consequences. They count down from 5. But not loudly, not aggressively. Not with the impatient edge that Western parents and teachers use when they are about to lose their temper. A calm, steady, almost musical count. Go, yan, san, nai, ikai, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And by the time they reach 1, every child has put away their supplies, returned to their seat, and is sitting quietly, hands folded, ready for the next thing. Every single time. This is not because Japanese children are magically obedient. It is not because they are born with some genetic predisposition to compliance. It is because the countdown creates a neurological trigger that bypasses the decision-making part of the brain entirely. Your prefrontal cortex, the part that weighs pros and cons, that considers alternatives, that generates excuses and justifications and reasons to delay, that part is slow. It takes time to deliberate. Your motor cortex, the part that initiates physical movement, is fast. It can act on a signal almost instantly. When you hear a countdown, your brain shifts into anticipation mode. It recognizes the pattern. It knows what comes at the end of the sequence. And it primes your body to move when the sequence completes. The decision has already been made by the structure of the countdown itself. All that is left is the action. The children are not deciding to clean up. The countdown is deciding for them, and their bodies respond before their minds can object. This is the foundation of the 5-second technique I mentioned at the start, and I will explain exactly how to use it in precise detail in just a moment. But first, understand why it works on a biological level. A 2022 study from Waseda University in Tokyo examined the effect of structured countdowns on task initiation in adults. Participants who used a silent 5-second countdown before beginning a dreaded task were 78% more likely to start the task within the countdown window than those who simply told themselves to begin. 78%. That is not a marginal improvement. That is a complete inversion of the typical procrastination pattern. The countdown hijacks the brain's action circuits and leaves the hesitation circuits offline. It is a neurological shortcut, a backdoor into your own motor system. And Japanese culture has embedded this shortcut into daily life in ways most people, including most Japanese people, never consciously notice. It is in the schools. It is in the railway systems, as we will discuss. It is in the rhythm of traditional arts, where a teacher counts beats before a student begins a movement. It is woven into the fabric of the culture so deeply that it has become invisible. I started using this with my morning alarm. For years, I was a chronic snooze button abuser. I would hit snooze 3, 4, sometimes 5 times every single morning. Each time, I would tell myself just 9 more minutes, as if 9 minutes was going to make any difference in how tired I felt. Each time, I would drift back into a shallow, restless half-sleep that was not actually restful at all. And each time, I would wake up again feeling slightly more guilty and slightly more exhausted than before. I once calculated, in a fit of self-loathing, that I was spending over 90 hours a year just delaying getting out of bed. 90 hours, that is more than 2 full work weeks. Spent lying in bed, not sleeping, not resting, just avoiding the moment of standing up. Then I tried the countdown. The moment my alarm went off, I would silently count down from 5 in my head. Go yon, san, nai, ikai, and on ikai I would swing my legs out of bed and stand up. No thinking, no negotiating, no assessing how tired I felt. No internal debate about whether I had slept enough or whether the day ahead was worth getting up for. The countdown was the only thing in my head. The first week was strange. My brain, so accustomed to its morning negotiation ritual, kept trying to interrupt the countdown with thoughts. But I am still tired, maybe just 5 more minutes. The pillow feels so good. Just one snooze. I learned to keep counting anyway. I learned to make the counting louder than the excuses. I would count more forcefully in my head, drowning out the protests. And something remarkable happened. By week 2, the protests stopped. My brain had learned that the countdown meant movement was coming, and it stopped wasting energy trying to prevent it. The countdown became automatic. Alarm, count, stand. Within a month, I had not hit snooze a single time. Not once. This from a man who had spent decades as a serial snoozer. The countdown works. But the real secret, the one I am building toward, the one that ties all of these habits together into a single, devastatingly effective technique, is even more powerful. Habit number 6. The one-touch rule that Japanese offices use to eliminate email paralysis. Walk into a Japanese office, and you will notice something peculiar about how paperwork is handled. It is subtle, easy to miss if you are not looking for it, but once you see it, you cannot unsee it. A document lands on a desk. It is touched exactly once before a decision is made. Read, respond, file, or discard. One touch. The rule is explicit and culturally enforced. You do not pick up a piece of paper, glance at it, set it down, pick it up again later. Reread it, set it down again, shuffle it to a different pile. And finally deal with it a week later after you have wasted 15 cumulative minutes just re-engaging with the same piece of information. That cycle of repeated touching is considered wasteful, inefficient, and subtly disrespectful to the information itself. It implies that the information was not important enough to handle properly the first time. The one-touch rule applies to everything: emails, letters, forms, invoices, memos. Each item that enters your sphere of attention is handled immediately and completely. You touch it, you resolve it, you move on. This eliminates the massive time sink of rereading and redeciding. Studies from organizational psychology have estimated that the average American knowledge worker spends nearly 30% of their day just reorienting themselves to tasks they have already looked at but not completed. 30%. That is almost 2.5 hours every single day lost to the friction of restarting. Lost to the mental effort of reloading context. What was this about again? What did I decide last time? Where was I in the process? Did I already reply to this? The one-touch rule makes all of that cognitive reloading unnecessary because there is nothing to reload. The task is done. The decision is made. The mental file is closed. The one-touch rule is not just about efficiency. It is about mental clarity. Every time you re-engage with a task you previously deferred, you pay a cognitive tax. It is a real, measurable drain on your mental resources. You have to reload the entire context into your working memory. You have to reconstruct the decision tree. You have to remind yourself of the stakes, the deadlines, the relevant details. And then, after all that effort, you often make the same decision you made the first time and finally act on it. All of that reloading was wasted energy. Japanese office culture treats this reloading as a failure of the initial engagement. If you touch it, you finish it, or you do not touch it at all. Do not pick up the document unless you are ready to resolve it. Do not open the email unless you have the bandwidth to respond. This sounds rigid, and in some ways it is. But the rigidity is protective. It protects your attention from the death by 1,000 paper cuts that is the default state of modern Western work. I applied this to my email inbox, and the results were staggering. Before I would open an email, read it, think I will deal with this later, and then mark it as unread so it would stay in my face. By the end of the week, I had dozens of emails I had read multiple times but never acted on. Dozens of tiny open loops, each one taking up a sliver of my mental RAM. I switched to one touch. Open the email. If it requires a response that takes less than 2 minutes, I respond immediately. Right then, before I close the window. If it requires more time, I immediately schedule a specific time block on my calendar to handle it. And then I archive the email. Gone from the inbox. I never close an email and leave it sitting there, bold and unread, a little accusation every time I glance at my screen. The first week I did this, I cleared my inbox to 0 for the first time in 3 years. 3 years of accumulated digital debris, gone in a week. The mental relief was so profound, I felt physically lighter. I felt like I had been carrying a backpack full of rocks and someone had finally let me take it off. Try this with your own inbox tomorrow. 1 touch per email, no rereading. No deferring without scheduling, no marking as unread. You will reclaim hours of your week and a peace of mind you did not realize you had lost. Habit number 5. The sacred pause that stops Japanese workers from burning out. There is a Japanese word you need to know, inemuri. It translates roughly to sleeping while present. In Japanese workplaces, if an employee falls asleep at their desk or during a meeting, it is not seen as laziness. It is not seen as a sign of disengagement or disrespect. It is seen as evidence of hard work, someone who has pushed themselves to exhaustion in service of their duties. Inemuri is a socially accepted, even admired form of power napping that signals dedication. The employee is so committed, so hardworking, that their body has simply given out. But here is the twist, and it is a twist that took me years to understand. Inemuri is not actually about sleeping. It is about the cultural permission to pause without guilt, to stop, to close your eyes, to let your mind drift, without anyone questioning your work ethic or your commitment. In the West, we treat rest as a reward you earn after everything is done. But everything is never done. There is always more email, more laundry, more errands, more tasks breeding in the dark corners of your to-do list. So rest never comes, or when it does, it is tainted with guilt. You should be working. You are falling behind. Everyone else is grinding. This guilt makes rest non-restorative. You lie down, and your mind races with everything you have not finished. You close your eyes and see the unfinished spreadsheet, the unreturned call, the unwritten report. You are physically still, but mentally sprinting. Japanese culture, through practices like inemuri, normalizes the idea that pausing is part of the work, not a break from it. The pause is not a failure of productivity. It is a necessary phase of the productivity cycle. A 2021 study from Osaka University found that workers who took brief, unscheduled pauses throughout the day, even just closing their eyes for 5 minutes with no specific agenda, showed a 34% improvement in task completion speed afterward compared to those who powered through without pausing. Not a 5% improvement. Not a marginal gain, 34%. The brain is not designed for continuous output. It is not a machine that can run at full speed indefinitely. It cycles between focus and diffuse modes. The focus mode is what we think of as work. Concentrated attention on a specific problem. The diffuse mode is the daydreaming state, the state where your mind wanders and makes unexpected connections. And the diffuse mode is where creative problem-solving actually happens. It is where insights appear, where solutions to problems you have been wrestling with suddenly crystallize. When you refuse to pause, when you chain yourself to focus mode without relief, you trap your brain in a state that is actually less productive. You starve it of the diffuse processing that solves the very problems you are banging your head against. I started practicing intentional in-emuri moments during my workday. Not sleeping at my desk, though I have done that too, but closing my eyes for 3 to 5 minutes with no phone, no music, no podcast, no agenda, just letting my brain drift wherever it wanted to go. At first it felt indulgent, almost shameful. I was acutely aware of the clock on my wall, the ticking of seconds that I could be using to produce something. I should be doing something. This is a waste of time. But I kept at it, because the research was compelling and my own experience of burnout was undeniable. And within 2 weeks, I noticed something strange. The solutions to problems I had been wrestling with for hours, sometimes days, would appear during these pauses. Fully formed, effortless, like someone had dropped them into my head. My brain had been trying to solve them the whole time, working on them in the background, but I had been too busy, too relentlessly focused, to let the answer surface. The pause was not a waste of time. It was the most productive thing I did all day. Give yourself permission to pause today. 5 minutes, eyes closed, no guilt, no agenda, just let your mind drift. Watch what happens. The answer you have been looking for might be waiting for you in the silence. Habit number 4. The morning ritual that Japanese monks have practiced for 800 years. Before a Zen monk begins a day of meditation and work, they perform a ritual that seems entirely unrelated to productivity. They clean, not a quick tidy, not a cursory swipe with a cloth. A thorough, silent, deliberate cleaning of the temple floors, the gardens, the altars. Every surface is swept, wiped, and polished. Every stone is raked. Every corner is attended to. This ritual is called soji, and it is not optional. It is not something the monks do when they feel like it, or when the temple looks dirty. It is a daily practice, as essential as the meditation itself. And here is what most Western observers miss. Soji is not about cleanliness. It is about priming the mind for action. The physical motion of cleaning, the repetitive sweeping, the quiet focus on a simple, tangible task, pulls the brain out of its chaotic default mode and into a state of calm readiness. The default mode network, the brain state associated with mind wandering and rumination and anxiety about the past and future, quiets down. The task-positive network, the state associated with focused attention on the present moment, activates. By the time the monk sits down to meditate, their mind is already still. The cleaning has done half the work. Japanese culture has preserved this insight in countless secular forms. The shopkeeper who sweeps the sidewalk in front of their store each morning before opening. The office worker who wipes down their desk before turning on their computer. The chef who sharpens their knives before the first order comes in. The housewife who opens the windows and airs out the futons before starting breakfast. These are not chores. They are not obligations to be resented. They are ignition sequences. They are the rituals that signal to the brain it is time to shift from rest mode to work mode. And they work because they are physical. You cannot think your way into a productive state. You have to move your way into it. The body leads and the mind follows. A 2020 study from Kyoto University examined the psychological effects of brief cleaning rituals on task initiation. Participants who spent just 10 minutes cleaning their immediate environment before beginning a cognitively demanding task showed significantly lower cortisol levels, meaning less stress, and completed the task 22% faster than those who started cold. The researchers theorize that the cleaning ritual provides a sense of control and order that counteracts the anxiety of the unknown task ahead. Procrastination is often not about laziness, it is about anxiety. The task feels too big, too vague, too overwhelming. You do not know where to start, so you do not start at all. Cleaning shrinks the world back down to something manageable. You can control this desk. You can sweep this floor. You can make this small corner of the universe orderly and clean. And once you have proven to yourself, physically, that you can control something, the larger task feels less daunting. You have built a small victory, and victories, even tiny ones, create momentum. I resisted this for years. I thought cleaning before work was just another form of procrastination. Productive procrastination, I called it. Rearranging my desk instead of writing, organizing my files instead of making the call. I told myself I was just tricking myself into feeling productive while avoiding the real work. And sometimes that was true. But when I finally tried it as a deliberate ritual, not as avoidance but as ignition, the difference was immediate. 10 minutes of cleaning my workspace every morning, no phone, no music. No podcast chattering in my ears, just silent tidying, wiping surfaces, straightening objects, creating order. And then I sat down to work. The transition was seamless, no resistance, no staring at a blank screen, no sudden urge to check social media, or make coffee, or do anything other than the thing I was supposed to do. My brain was already in motion, already in that state of focused attention. And it carried that momentum directly into the task. Try this tomorrow morning. Before you check your phone, before you open your laptop, before you do anything else, spend 10 minutes cleaning something. Anything: your desk, your kitchen counter, your bedroom floor, a single shelf. Do it silently and deliberately. Pay attention to the motion of your hands, the texture of the surfaces, the transformation of disorder into order. Then start your work. You will feel the difference in your bones. You will feel the quiet readiness that the monks have been cultivating for 8 centuries. Habit number 3. The pointing and calling method that Japan's railway system uses to prevent fatal errors. If you have ever ridden a train in Japan, and I mean really watched what was happening, you may have noticed something peculiar. The train conductors and platform attendants do not just look at signals and indicators. They point at them, extending their arm fully, index finger aimed directly at the object of attention. And they speak out loud. Signal is green, doors are clear. Speed is 80 kilometers per hour. They do this hundreds of times a day. Every signal, every indicator, every safety check, point. Speak. Point, speak. This practice is called shisakenko, pointing and calling. It was developed by Japan's railway system over a century ago, back when trains were steam-powered, and errors meant catastrophic loss of life. It has since been adopted by industries worldwide where error prevention is critical, including aviation, nuclear power, and surgery. And here is the shocking part. A study by Japan's Railway Technical Research Institute found that pointing and calling reduces errors by up to 85% compared to simply looking at a task. 85%. Let that number sink in. The difference between glancing at something and pointing at it while speaking out loud is the difference between making an error most of the time and making almost no errors at all. The reason is that pointing and speaking engage multiple senses simultaneously. Vision, physical movement, auditory feedback. This multisensory engagement forces your brain to process the information more deeply. It cannot skim. It cannot half-see. You cannot point at something and say it out loud while your mind is somewhere else. The act anchors your attention in the present moment, with a force that passive observation simply cannot match. Now here is why this matters for procrastination. Most procrastination happens because our attention is fragmented. We are half thinking about the task we should be doing while also half scrolling our phone, half worrying about something else, half listening to a podcast, half planning dinner. We never fully land on the task, so we never fully start it. We hover above it, a ghost in our own life, present but not engaged. Shisakanko forces a full landing. When you point at the thing you need to do and say out loud what you are about to do, your brain cannot split its attention anymore. The commitment is made, the words have been spoken, the body has moved. The action begins. I tried this with my most dreaded daily task, writing. Every morning, I would sit down at my desk and immediately feel the pull of distraction. Open a tab, check a message, scroll for just a second, just one quick look. And an hour would vanish. A full hour gone, consumed by the digital void. Then I started pointing at my laptop screen and saying out loud, I am now opening the document and writing for 25 minutes. The first time I did it, I felt ridiculous. A grown man, alone in a room, pointing at a computer and talking to himself like a character in a strange play. But it worked. The physical act of pointing and the sound of my own voice making a declaration cut through the mental fog like a knife. I started writing immediately. No hesitation, no tab-opening detour. No sudden urge to check email. The declaration had been made. To not write after saying I would write would be to break a promise made out loud, and something in my psychology could not tolerate that. Try this today. When you are about to start a task you have been avoiding, point at it. Actually extend your arm and point your finger at the object or the screen. And say out loud in a clear voice exactly what you are about to do. I am now opening this bill and paying it. I am now picking up this laundry and folding it. I am now opening this email and responding. I am now picking up the phone and making this call. The ridiculousness you feel, that self-conscious squirm, is the feeling of your procrastination circuits short-circuiting. They have no defense against a physical declaration. They thrive in ambiguity, in the vague maybe later, in the unspoken intention. A pointed finger and a spoken sentence leave them nowhere to hide. Habit number 2. The 5-minute now rule that Japanese grandmothers enforce without mercy. There is an unspoken rule in traditional Japanese households that I have never seen written down anywhere. Not in a book, not on a blog, not in a productivity manual, but I have observed it in every Japanese home I have visited. From tiny apartments in Tokyo to sprawling farmhouses in Hokkaido. If a task takes less than 5 minutes, it does not exist in the future. It only exists in the now. There is no concept of doing it later. Later is for things that require planning, resources, or extended time. A 5-minute task is not a task. It is a motion, and a motion is completed the moment it is recognized. This rule is enforced not through nagging or charts or productivity systems or apps with notification badges. It is enforced through the quiet, unyielding example of the matriarch of the home. The grandmother who washes a teacup before the tea has even cooled. The mother who folds a blanket while still standing up from the couch. The aunt who responds to a text message before she puts her phone back in her pocket. These women do not think of themselves as productive. They do not use that word. They think of themselves as normal. The idea of letting small tasks accumulate into a mountain of dread is simply foreign to them. It is not how they were raised. It is not how their mothers were raised. It is a cultural inheritance, so deep it has become invisible. The 5-minute now rule works because it prevents the accumulation of what I have come to call psychic debt. Every small task you defer becomes a tiny loan you take out against your future self. You are borrowing time and energy from the person you will be in an hour, or tomorrow, or next week. And just like financial debt, these tiny loans compound. By the end of the day, you owe yourself dozens of small actions. By the end of the week, hundreds. You walk around with a constant, low-level anxiety that is nothing more than the weight of all the undone 5-minute tasks you have been deferring. The unopened mail, the unwashed cup, the unsent reply, the unhung jacket. Each one is a tiny pebble in your shoe, one pebble you can ignore. A shoe full of pebbles, and every step hurts. Japanese grandmothers do not carry this weight. They discharge each debt the moment it appears. And as a result, their lives feel lighter, their homes feel calmer, and their minds are free to focus on things that actually matter. They are not spending mental energy tracking dozens of tiny open loops. They closed the loops before they could form. I started tracking my 5-minute deferrals as an experiment. Every time I thought I will do that later for something that would take less than 5 minutes, I wrote it down. Just a quick note on a pad on my desk. By noon on the first day, I had a list of 14 items. 14. Tiny tasks I had already postponed. Hanging up a jacket. Wiping a small spill in the fridge that I had noticed and walked away from. Responding to a 2-sentence email. Putting a book back on the shelf. Replacing an empty toilet paper roll. Filling my water bottle. Deleting a spam text, each one individually meaningless. So small as to be almost invisible. Collectively, a fog of incompletion that followed me through the day. The next day, I implemented the 5-minute now rule. If I noticed it and it took less than 5 minutes, I did it immediately. No list, no scheduling, no mental debate, no pause to consider whether this was the optimal moment. I just moved. By the end of that day, I felt a lightness I had not felt in years. My mind was quiet. There was nothing hanging over me. No cloud of tiny undone things buzzing in the background. Try this for just one day. Every time you notice a sub-5-minute task, do it before you take another breath. Before your brain can even form the word later. You will be shocked at how much mental energy you have been wasting on things that take less time than scrolling through one social media feed. And now, we arrive at habit number 1, the 5-second Japanese technique that ends procrastination. This is the technique I promised you. The one that changed everything for me. The one that ties together the countdowns, the immediate action, the pointing and calling, the sacred pause, all of it. It is called Kaishi no Gosei, the 5-second rule of starting. And it is so simple, you will be tempted to dismiss it. Your brain will say, that cannot possibly work. That is too easy. If it were that easy, everyone would do it. And that dismissal, that exact impulse to look for something more complicated, because the simple thing could not possibly solve a problem this big. That impulse is the very thing that has been keeping you stuck your entire life. Do not let it win this time. The simplicity is the power. Here is how it works. The moment you feel the impulse to do something, anything, a productive action, a task you have been avoiding, a call you need to make, a sentence you need to write, a floor you need to sweep, a bill you need to pay. You have exactly 5 seconds to physically move toward that action before your brain kills the impulse. Not 5 seconds to think about it. Not 5 seconds to plan it. Not 5 seconds to evaluate whether now is the right time. 5 seconds to move your body, stand up, reach for the object, open the document. Pick up the phone, lace your shoes, pull out the drawer. If you do not initiate physical movement within 5 seconds, your brain will engage what neuroscientists call the braking mechanism. The prefrontal cortex will generate a reason not to act. Too tired, too busy. Not the right time, maybe after lunch. You should really do more research first. You are not in the right headspace. The braking mechanism is not rational. It is automatic. It is a survival instinct left over from a time when novelty meant danger, when an unfamiliar impulse might lead you into the jaws of a predator. But in the modern world, the braking mechanism is not protecting you from predators. It is protecting you from discomfort. And every time you let it win, every time you feel the impulse to act and then let the brake stop you, You reinforce the neural pathway that says avoidance is safe. You teach your brain that the impulse was a false alarm, that the brake was correct, that the safe thing to do is nothing. And over time, the impulses get weaker and the brake gets stronger, until you are a person who never starts anything at all. Kaishi no Gosai exploits a loophole in this system. The braking mechanism takes approximately 5 seconds to fully engage. It is not instantaneous. There is a lag between the impulse to act and the inhibitory signal that shuts it down. If you move your body before the brake engages, the action has already begun. And once an action has begun, the brain's inertia shifts. It is now easier to continue than to stop. The hardest part of any task is the first 5 seconds. The transition from stillness to motion, from thinking to doing, from potential to kinetic. If you can compress that transition into less than 5 seconds, you bypass the entire machinery of procrastination. This is not motivational nonsense. This is not a pep talk. This is neurobiology. A 2023 study from the University of Tsukuba examined the precise time window between intention and action in the human brain. Using fMRI scans, researchers found that the neural signal to initiate a physical movement begins approximately 300 milliseconds before conscious awareness of the decision. Your brain has already decided to act before you even know you have decided. But the inhibitory signal, the braking mechanism, takes between 4 and 6 seconds to override the action signal. This means there is a brief window, roughly 5 seconds, where your brain has already decided to act, but has not yet decided to stop. If you move in that window, you outrun the brake. You act before the inhibition can catch up. And once you have acted, the brake becomes irrelevant. The thing is already happening. Japanese culture has intuitively understood this window for centuries. It is embedded in the countdowns used in schools, in the immediate task resolution of households, in the pointing and calling of railway workers, in the cleaning rituals of Zen monks. All of these practices are variations on the same principle. Shorten the gap between impulse and action to less than 5 seconds. Do not give the brain time to argue with itself. The argument is always lost. The action is always won. The West has built an entire productivity industry around managing the argument. To-do lists, prioritization matrices, Pomodoro timers, habit trackers, accountability apps, all of them are attempts to win the argument with your own brain. And the argument cannot be won, because the part of your brain that argues against action is not interested in logic. It is interested in safety. And safety, to an ancient brain living in a modern world, means staying exactly where you are. Kaishi no Gosai does not try to win the argument. It refuses to have the argument at all. It short-circuits the debate and goes straight to action. I discovered Kaishi no Gosai during a period of my life when procrastination had become crippling. I was a writer who was not writing. Every morning, I would sit down with the intention to work, and every morning I would find a reason to do something else. Research, I need to read a few more articles before I can start. Outline. My outline is not detailed enough. Organize my files. I cannot work in this digital clutter. Read one more book. I just need one more piece of information. The blank page terrified me, and my brain had become an expert at protecting me from it. The protection felt like wisdom. It felt like being thorough and prepared. But it was fear, pure, simple fear of producing something that might not be good enough. I read about the 5-second window in a Japanese neuroscience journal, a dense paper full of terms I barely understood, and I decided to test it with the most extreme version I could imagine. No warm-up, no preparation, no easing in, no reading one more thing. The moment I sat down at my desk, I would count down from 5 in my head and then physically start typing. Not thinking about what to type, not planning the sentence. not waiting for inspiration, just moving my fingers on the keyboard. Go, yan, san, nai, ikai. Type. The first day I typed nonsense. Gibberish. Random words strung together with no meaning. But I was typing. My fingers were moving. The action had begun. And within 30 seconds, the gibberish became sentences. Within 2 minutes, I was writing the article I had been avoiding for 3 weeks. The braking mechanism had been outrun. There was nothing left to stop me. The words were coming, and they were fine, and even when they were not fine, they existed, which was infinitely better than the perfect unwritten article that had been living in my head. The technique works for everything. A phone call you have been dreading. Count down from 5 and dial before you reach 1. Do not think about what you are going to say. Do not rehearse the conversation. Just dial, the words will come, a workout you keep postponing. Count down from 5 and put on your shoes before the count ends. Do not think about how tired you are or how hard the workout will be. Just put on the shoes. The rest will follow. A difficult conversation you need to have with someone you love. Count down from 5 and open your mouth and say the first word before the break can stop you. The first word is the hardest. After that, the conversation has its own momentum, a sink full of dishes. Count down from 5 and pick up the sponge, a cluttered room. Count down from 5 and pick up the first object. The countdown is not a motivational tool. It is a neurological weapon. It severs the connection between the impulse to act and the impulse to avoid. And once that connection is severed, you become someone who does things. Not someone who plans to do things. Not someone who wants to do things. Not someone who reads about productivity and feels inspired and then does nothing. Someone who does them. Now I want to be honest with you about something. This technique is simple, but it is not always easy. There will be days when the 5-second window feels impossibly short. Days when the break engages so fast you barely feel the impulse before it is gone. Days when you count down from 5 and then just sit there, frozen. The count finished and your body still motionless. This happens. It happened to me many times in the first weeks. The break is strong. It has been reinforced by years, maybe decades of avoidance. You cannot expect to dismantle it in a day. But here is what I learned. When you fail to move, when you count down and stay frozen, do not berate yourself. Do not add shame to the equation, just count again. Reset, go, yan, san, nai, ikai, move. The second countdown often works when the first one failed. And if the second one fails, count a third time. The break weakens with each attempt. It cannot hold forever against repeated activation signals. This is not about perfection. It is about persistence. Every time you successfully move within the 5-second window, you weaken the braking pathway and strengthen the action pathway. You are rewiring your brain, one 5-second burst at a time. Be patient with the process, but be relentless. The Japanese have a word for the state of being fully engaged in an action, fully absorbed in a life that feels meaningful and directed. Ikigai. It is often translated as reason for being, but more accurately it means the feeling of waking up to a life worth living. The feeling that your days have shape and purpose. Procrastination is the opposite of ikigai. It is the slow death of purpose through 1,000 tiny surrenders to the braking mechanism. Every time you let the brake win, you lose a piece of your sense that you are in control of your own life. You reinforce the story that you are someone who cannot be relied upon, even by yourself. Kaishi no Gosai gives that control back to you. It does not ask you to become a different person. It does not ask you to develop iron discipline or wake up at 4 a.m. or adopt some elaborate productivity system. It just asks you to move physically within 5 seconds of feeling the impulse to act. 5 seconds. That is all it takes to reclaim your agency. 5 seconds between the person you are and the person you want to be. 5 seconds between the thought and the deed. 5 seconds between the life you have and the life you could have. That is not an exaggeration. That is the actual distance. It is shorter than you ever imagined. I want you to try this right now. Not later, not after the video, not tomorrow morning when you feel fresh and motivated. Right now in this moment, while the impulse is alive. Think of the one task you have been avoiding most. The one that has been sitting in the back of your mind for days or weeks or months, quietly draining your energy every time you remember it. The one that makes your stomach tight a little when it surfaces. Got it? Hold it in your mind. Now I'm going to count down from 5. And when I reach 1, you are going to move your body toward that task. Not finish it, not complete it, just start it, just the first physical motion. Stand up. Open the document, pick up the phone, make the call, send the message. Pull out the drawer, walk to the sink. Whatever the first motion is, you will do it. Ready? Go. Yansan nai ikai move. That feeling you just experienced, the one where your body moved before your mind could object, that is kaishi no gosai. That is the 5-second technique. And that is the only thing that has ever stood between you and the life you keep telling yourself, you will start tomorrow. Tomorrow is not a day on the calendar. It is a lie your braking mechanism tells you to keep you safe and small and stuck. It is a mirage that recedes as you approach it. There is no tomorrow. There is only now. There is only the 5-second window, opening and closing with every impulse you feel. And now that you know it exists, you can never unknow it. Every moment of hesitation for the rest of your life will be accompanied by the awareness that you have exactly 5 seconds to move. And that awareness, my friend, is the end of procrastination. It is not magic. It is not discipline. It is not a personality trait you were born without. It is a 5-second choice that you now have the power to make, every single time. The Japanese have known this for centuries. They baked it into their schools, their railways, their temples, their homes. They did not write books about it or build apps around it. They just lived it. Now you know it too. Use it.